All right, so today we're diving deep, into this whole headless e-commerce thing. And I got to be honest, when I first heard that term, I was like, whoa, sounds pretty techy. Maybe even kind of intimidating. But the more I've been reading up on it, the more I'm realizing it's actually super fascinating.
Oh, it really is. And you're not wrong. The name can be a little misleading. It's not about, literally chopping off heads or anything crazy like that. Once we break it down, it's a pretty straightforward concept.
Okay, good, because I definitely need that breakdown.
Yeah.
Our source today is this article called Six Best Headless E-Commerce Platforms to Start Online Business. It's by Padma Priya, and it was just published literally today, February 4th, 2025, so fresh off the press. And one stat in this article really jumped out at me. 57% of companies, get this, are predicted to go headless by NXT year 2024. I mean, that's huge.
It is a huge number, and it makes sense when you think about the bigger picture. E-commerce is exploding right now. By 2025, it's predicted to be almost a quarter of all retail sales, like in the entire world. So this isn't some niche tech thing we're talking about. This is how business is going to be done online, period.
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to realize. So for everyone listening, our goal today is to make sure that by the end of this deep dive, you not only get what headless e-commerce actually is, but you also have a good grasp on the top platforms out there and what to really consider if you're thinking about making the switch yourself.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, so first things first, what is headless e-commerce? The article uses this analogy, I kind of like it. It talks about separating the storefront, meaning what us customers see on a website, from the back office, all the inventory orders, payment processing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy. Think of it like this in a traditional setup. It's like your storefront and back office are all glued together. So if you wanted to change the design of your website, let's say update the look and feel, you risk messing with the code that impacts or orders your inventory. It can be really risky and a real headache.
Okay. So like it's this big tangled mess behind the scenes. So with headless, you're like decoupling those two things.
Exactly. You've got the freedom to change your storefront without impacting your back office and vice versa. This gives you so much flexibility you just wouldn't have with those traditional platforms.
And the article claims this flexibility leads to better customer experiences. Like they have a stat in here that says 92% of businesses using headless say it helps them offer a better experience to their customers. I mean, that's got to be music to any business owner's ears.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you're not constantly fighting with your technology, you can actually focus on what really matters, giving your customers a smooth, enjoyable, and personalized experience. That's what builds loyalty and keeps people coming back.
I like that it's not just about the tech itself, but how that tech impacts the customer. So the article highlights these 6 platforms that it considers the best for headless e-commerce. I know we can't go through all of them in detail, but maybe we could pick out a few that might be super relevant to someone listening in right now.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. So where do you want to start? I mean, Shopify Plus is a name everyone's heard of, right? The article says it's super user-friendly, which I imagine is really appealing to someone who maybe doesn't have a whole in-house development team.
Yeah, Shopify Plus is great for that ease of use factor. It's kind of like the Apple of e-commerce. You know what I mean? Very intuitive, lots of support available if you get stuck. It really takes care of a lot of the technical heavy lifting, so you can just focus on running your business.
That makes sense. So for someone who maybe isn't super techy, but wants to explore this whole headless thing, Shopify Plus could be a good place to start.
Definitely worth checking out. But for someone listening who's more of a techie, maybe they're comfortable diving into code and really customizing things, then Webnexus might be more up their alley.
Oh, yeah, Webnexus. That's the one with like a zillion features and integrations, right?
That's the one. Over 100 features and over 100 API integrations, which basically means you can connect it to tons of other tools and services. So if you're someone who likes to, tinker and experiment, Webnexus gives you a ton of power and flexibility.
Sounds like it could be a playground for the right person. But what if someone's main concern is reliability? Like they absolutely cannot have their website going down, especially during a big sale or a launch. What would you recommend then?
Yeah, reliability is huge, especially for e-commerce. I'd say BigCommerce stands out there. They've got a 99.99% uptime, which is super impressive. They're known for being stable and high-performing, so you can be confident your store will be up and running no matter what.
So we've got 3 pretty different options there, each with their own strengths.
Exactly. And the other 3 platforms the article mentions, Adobe, Commerce, Salesforce, Commerce Cloud, and Pomos Tools, they all have their own niches as well. It really boils down to what you, the listener, prioritize.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting, right? It's not just about understanding what headless is. It's about figuring out if it's the right fit for you. And if so, which of these platforms aligns with your needs and your comfort level?
That's what it's all about. And even once you've chosen your platform, there are other components of this whole headless ecosystem to think about.
Okay, I'm all ears. What else do we need to know?
Well, one of the big things is with headless, you're responsible for building your storefront separately. Remember we talked about decoupling the front end from the back end?
So in the first part, we were talking about how headless e-commerce is all about separating the storefront from the back office. And now we're stepping into the role of like architects to build that storefront, one that's really unique and tailored to our needs.
I like that analogy a lot. And just like an architect needs blueprints, right? In the world of headless e-commerce, we rely on these things called APIs.
Yes, APIs. You've mentioned them a few times, but maybe we could break down what an API actually is and why they're so important here. Because I'll be honest, I hear API all the time, but I'm not always sure I fully grasp what they do.
Yeah, it's one of those terms that sounds way more complicated than it actually is. You can think of an API like a messenger. It lets different systems talk to each other. So in our headless setup, you'll have your chosen e-commerce platform that's handling all the back-end stuff, inventory orders, all that. And then you have your separately built storefront, which is what the customer actually sees and interacts with. The API is what allows those two things to communicate.
Okay, so let me see if I'm getting this. Let's say I'm on your online store and I add like a cool new gadget to my cart. Behind the scenes, an API is telling the e-commerce platform, hey, this person just added this to their cart. Update the inventory, get ready for checkout.
Exactly. It all happens in milliseconds, so fast that you, the customer, don't even notice it's happening. But without those APIs, your storefront wouldn't be able to talk to the back end. And your whole e-commerce system would basically just fall apart.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. APIs, they're like the unsung heroes of headless e-commerce. But now I'm thinking about the actual storefront itself. If I'm not using a traditional platform that comes with like a built-in storefront, how do I actually build that front end?
Well, there are a couple of ways you can go about it. If you've got a strong in-house development team, you could build a completely custom storefront from scratch. This gives you like ultimate control over the design, the functionality, the user experience.
So that's for the hardcore coders out there, the ones who really want to get their hands dirty.
Exactly. But for folks who maybe don't have those coding skills or are just looking for something faster and more cost-effective, there are these things called front-end frameworks.
Front-end frameworks.
Yeah, think of them like pre-built Lego sets for building websites. They provide the structure, a set of tools, pre-coded components that can save you a ton of time and effort. Some popular ones in the headless world are React, Vue.js, and Angular.
Okay, so it's like choosing from a menu of different styles and layouts, rather than starting with a totally blank page.
Exactly. And a lot of these frameworks are open source, meaning they're free to use. So it's a great way to get a beautiful, functional storefront up and running without breaking the bank.
That's always a good thing. Now, we've been talking about APIs connecting the storefront to the back-end platform. But what about connecting to all those other tools and services that a business might use, like email marketing platforms, CRMs, analytics, dashboards, that kind of stuff? Does Headless make those integrations easier or harder?
That's actually one of the big advantages of going headless, because you've decoupled your systems, you've got way more flexibility to integrate with whatever tools you need.
So you can kind of build your own custom tech stack,
Yep.
one that perfectly fits your business.
Exactly. A lot of headless platforms offer pre-built integrations too. And you can always use those APIs we talked about to connect to pretty much any other service out there.
So you could create a really streamlined and automated workflow where everything's talking to each other and working together seamlessly. That's powerful stuff.
It is. But let's not forget about content. In traditional e-commerce, your content, like product descriptions, blog posts, images, all that, is usually managed within the e-commerce platform itself. But with Headless, things are a little different.
You're saying we need to think about content management separately.
Yeah, exactly. Because we separated that front end, we need a dedicated spot to store and manage all that content that's going to live on our storefront. And that's where a content management system, or CMS, comes in.
Okay, so we're talking content management systems, or CMS for short. I think a lot of people listening, myself included, might be thinking, don't I already have a CMS? Doesn't my e-commerce platform handle that already?
Yeah, it's a common question. And yeah, those traditional platforms, they usually have some basic content management stuff built in. But when you go headless, you're really opening up a whole new world of possibilities for how you manage and actually deliver your content. It's about thinking bigger.
Okay, so paint that bigger picture for me. What makes a separate CMS so beneficial in the headless world?
All right, imagine you're running a clothing store online, right? You've got product descriptions, blog posts about the latest trends, maybe even videos showing off new collections. In a traditional setup, all that content lives within your e-commerce platform. But with a dedicated CMS, you can actually separate that content from like the sales side of things.
So it's kind of like giving your content its own space to breathe and flourish?
Exactly. Think of it like having a super cool content studio. Your creative team can write, edit, and organize all your content without being limited by your e-commerce platform. And then using those APIs we talked about earlier, you can seamlessly deliver that content to your storefront, your mobile app, your social media feeds, anywhere you want it.
So it's about creating this whole content ecosystem that feeds all those different channels. Okay, that's starting to click for me. But there are a ton of CMS options out there. How do you even know which one's right for you?
It's a good question. And just like choosing a headless platform, it comes down to your specific needs and priorities. What are you focused on? Is it mainly written content, or do you need to handle rich media like videos and interactive stuff? Do you have a big team of content creators who need to collaborate, or are you a solo operation?
So it's about matching the CMS to your content strategy and how your team actually works. What are some popular CMS options that people might have heard of?
Sure, one that's really big is Contentful. They're known for being super flexible and developer-friendly. If you want a lot of control over how you structure your content and how it gets delivered, Contentful's worth checking out.
Okay, so Contentful for the control freaks, got it. What about someone who's a little more intimidated by the technical side of things? Is there a CMS that's known for being super user-friendly?
Absolutely. Prismic is a great option there. They really prioritize ease of use and have a really intuitive interface. It's perfect for content creators who just want to focus on making great content without having to wrestle with a complicated system.
Love it. So we've got Contentful for the tech-savvy folks and Prismic for those who prioritize ease of use. What about the open source fans out there?
Strapi is a popular choice for that. It's self-hosted, which means you're in complete control. But it also means you need a bit more technical expertise to set it up and manage it.
A bit more DIY then. I think this is really helpful because a lot of people, when they hear about headless e-commerce, they might just get stuck on choosing that platform.
Yeah,
but it's so clear now that it's like a whole ecosystem of tools and decisions to make.
For sure. And the CMS is a crucial part of that ecosystem. It's where your brand story really comes to life.
We've been pretty excited about headless. I think I'm starting to get it, but I'm also wondering, are there any downsides, any challenges or drawbacks that people should be aware of before they jump in?
Yeah, it's always good to be realistic. No technology is perfect. I'd say one of the biggest challenges with Headless is that it does add complexity. You're now managing multiple systems, your e-commerce platform, your CMS, potentially other integrations.
So it's not as simple as just setting it up and forgetting about it. You need to be ready for a more hands-on approach.
Exactly. And you need to make sure that all these systems are working together smoothly. If something breaks, troubleshooting can get a little more complicated because you have multiple places where things could go wrong.
Okay, so you need a bit more technical know-how for sure. Anything else to watch out for?
Cost is definitely a factor. Building a custom storefront and integrating all those systems can require a pretty big upfront investment. And a lot of the best CMS platforms out there have subscription fees, you know?
So it really comes down to weighing the costs and benefits, making sure that headless really makes sense for your business goals, and that you're prepared for the technical and financial commitment involved.
You got it. It's not a decision to rush into, but for the right businesses, the benefits can definitely outweigh the challenges.
All right, so to wrap this all up, we've gone pretty deep on headless e-commerce today. We've talked about separating the storefront from the back office, the magic of APIs, the power of a dedicated CMS. I feel like I've leveled up my understanding for sure.
Me too. And the key takeaway here is that Headless is all about giving you choice. You're not limited by those traditional platforms anymore. You can build an e-commerce experience that's truly customized and perfectly aligned with your brand and your vision.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Creating those amazing experiences for our customers.
Well, huge thank you for taking this deep dive with me today. For everyone listening out there, I hope you feel like you have a much clearer understanding of what headless e-commerce really is and whether it might be right for you. If you want to learn more, remember our source material was that article 6, Best Headless Ecommerce Platforms to Start Online Business by Padma Priya. Go check it out and start exploring. Until next time, happy selling, everyone.